It was an ordinary morning, but the atmosphere in our living room was thick, heavy like storm clouds about to break. Walking into the house, a chill ran down my spine, a wave of distrust washing over me. Carrying the hopes of a dreamer, I crossed the threshold, and in an instant, Mark's vacant stare paralyzed me. My name is Jessica, I'm 38, and I'm an interior designer. Mark's expression, which once radiated love and trust, now reflected an indifference that deeply hurt me. He'd arrived before me, and the house was filled with a tense, silent atmosphere, as if the very air was holding its breath, waiting for a storm. "I don't need your help anymore," he said, cutting through the silence. Each word felt like a deep stab. The echo of that sentence reverberated within me as pain and betrayal welled up in my chest. How could he think of me as just a housewife, worthless? Mark forgot that my value isn't just in being a wife or a homemaker, but in what I can create. A wave of clarity washed over me in the darkness. I wasn't going to let him define me, not anymore. Looking around, the walls that were once witnesses to happy moments now felt oppressive, as if they were trying to swallow me whole. A lump formed in my throat, a mixture of anger and sadness, but instead of succumbing, I began to formulate a plan. What could have been a tragedy was becoming the trigger for a revolution in my life. Powerlessness quickly dissipated, giving way to a fierce flame of determination burning within me. How can I change this once and for all? I thought, envisioning a future where the walls of my house wouldn't be barriers, but a space where my creations came to life. Mark couldn't understand what was about to happen. He was trapped in his own mindset, an antiquated belief about what a woman's life should be. I had decided to break those chains. I started gathering information, seeking knowledge in the shadows he'd imposed on me. Nightly research in the quiet of the house, each click of the keyboard a prelude to the freedom I craved. Every book read, every design tool practiced, was a step toward my dream. Looking out the window, I saw the world outside, and in that moment, I wanted to be a part of it, not just a spectator. The isolation I felt became energy, a potent fuel feeding my desire for freedom. Dreams of a future filled with vibrant and innovative creations began to take shape in my mind, as if they were already tangible. The vision of a light-filled studio, with my projects spread out, filled my heart with hope. I rolled up my sleeves and decided I wouldn't let his contempt define who I was. A new Jessica was about to be born, and the determination I'd hidden under layers of expectation was breaking free. The silence that was once deafening now became a siren, summoning me to the fight I knew I needed to wage. This was my time, and I wasn't going to waste the opportunity to rebuild myself. The silent revolution I'd envisioned was about to begin. As I sat at the kitchen table, a now cold cup of coffee in my hands, I couldn't help but think about how it all began. I remembered when Mark used to praise me. "You're the best," he'd say, looking at my design portfolio, his words always filled with admiration and pride. The sparkle in his eyes reflected the hope in my dreams, a mirror of the future we envisioned together. Those moments were a song that now seemed distant, a lost echo in a sea of indifference. At the beginning of our relationship, we shared a mutual desire for growth and achievement. We attended design events, and I could see in his eyes the passion for my art, the way he commented on each project by my side. The nights spent discussing design ideas seemed endless, and I believed our partnership was unbreakable. His enthusiasm fueled my creativity, and together, we built a shared dream. However, over the years, that flame began to dim. The changes were subtle. Gradually, Mark started to ignore my innovative ideas. I remember meetings where I presented bold proposals and, instead of appreciation, received looks of disapproval and disdain. He no longer cared about what I had to offer, and every word of encouragement turned into silence. What was once support now felt like a cage. Exciting conversations became superficial, and the enthusiasm we once shared began to morph into a suffocating apathy. Every victory I achieved, every client I secured, seemed to widen the gap between us. Mark became increasingly critical. Sometimes, he questioned whether the time I dedicated to my work was worthwhile. He didn't realize that ambition wasn't just a phase. It was part of who I was. I didn't want to be just the woman who takes care of the house. I wanted to be recognized, not just in our home, but in the design world. This ambition, however, became a battleground, where we had conflicting visions of the future. And Clara, my best friend, played her part, supporting Mark's old-fashioned mentality. Jessica, you need to prioritize your family. What are you going to do when the kids are grown? She'd say, with a smile that seemed both worried and paternalistic. Her words were lukewarm soup, a comfort that, instead of nourishing me, seemed only to confine me. Clara felt threatened by my ambition, a reflection of the insecurity growing in her heart. The friendship that was once unshakable now became a source of tension, and I realized that the more I struggled to climb, the more she wanted me to stay where I was. The hours I spent in academic competitions, the clients I won, the projects I delivered, all of it danced in my mind like memories of a life that didn't seem to be mine. I had ignored the signs that my partnership with Mark had become toxic. Frustration grew in a vicious cycle, and I found myself in an emotional labyrinth. Why did my dreams scare the people who should be supporting me? Why was my determination seen as selfishness? Now, as I recall these memories, I realize the struggle isn't just with others, but also with my own insecurity. Ambition clashing with established family expectations was heavier than I imagined. I expected approval, not opposition. And, in this internal battle, I began to understand that true strength wasn't just in the desire to create, but also in the courage to be true to myself. With each memory filled with love and disillusionment, a new reality formed. I no longer wanted to be a shadow of myself, complacent in a life defined by others. Instead, I would be the architect of my own destiny, drawing each line with vibrant colors and details that reflected who I truly am. The support I expected from Mark and Clara might never come, and maybe I needed to find it in myself. I took a deep breath, feeling determination resurface. It was time for me to take control. In a world where so many expect women to remain within the confines of their homes, I was about to break those barriers and shout that my role in life wouldn't be dictated by the opinions of others. And with that, I saw the image of a new me take shape, a Jessica who would free herself to create not just beauty, but a legacy. The revolution was about to begin, and I was ready to be the protagonist of my own story. It was time to take the first step toward my dream. With determination coursing through my veins, I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. The sound of the keyboard transformed into a song that propelled me forward. My goal was clear: to research the interior design market, discover trends, and identify opportunities to create something that truly reflected who I was. With a click, I began navigating design websites and blogs. Word after word, a new world unfolded before me. Minimalist, sustainable, innovative, the terms danced on the screen. An article about the use of reusable materials stood out and caught my attention. The idea of creating beautiful and functional spaces that also respected the environment ignited a flame within me. This is what I wanted to do. A design studio that not only reflected my soul but also contributed to a better world. However, I knew this would require more than theory. Practice, the application of the information I was gathering, was crucial. In the following weeks, I immersed myself in an intense routine. I woke up before sunrise and worked late into the night, with a fervor I hadn't felt in a long time. I studied new trends, revised my portfolio, and began planning my first project. With each new piece of information I assimilated, my enthusiasm grew. One morning, while strolling through the city, I saw a store called Sustainable Elements. My interest was instantaneous, and I decided to go in. At the store, I was greeted by Anna, an energetic woman passionate about sustainable design. We talked about materials and trends until she offered to help me find suppliers of innovative products. Her willingness to collaborate was a relief, and I realized that, finally, there were people willing to support my fresh start. With Anna as an ally, our creative dynamic became a balm for my soul. I discovered techniques and methods that made me feel my potential as a designer blossom. Every conversation and exchange of ideas was a breath of life for my project, and I felt the energy of creation pulsating within me. Soon, I began to draw sketches and prototypes, experimenting with new ideas that arose as the world around me became a source of inspiration. Despite the growing enthusiasm, the shadow of Mark and Clara still loomed over me. I knew that if they saw my new path as a distraction, my efforts might be underestimated. The internal struggle of facing their critical and disdainful gazes made a point of manifesting itself in moments of solitude. Whenever I felt discouraged, an inner voice whispered, "What if you fail?" However, as soon as that doubt arose, another determination took its place. I couldn't let my fears paralyze me. Instead, I would start a new chapter, and I was determined to make it happen. One night, while browsing my social media, I saw that my old college classmate, Tom, was promoting his work. He had always been innovative and passionate about design, and the idea of him seeing my work made my heart race. I decided to contact him and quickly set up a coffee date. I needed an outside perspective, someone who could give me honest feedback. The energy of the revolution I sought now manifested in my daily life. My studio, previously underutilized, transformed into a creative sanctuary. The bare walls were filled with sketches and samples of sustainable materials that Clara helped me find. The fresh smell of paint and the gleam of new materials were a constant reminder that I was finally following my true path. Each morning, I woke up feeling the excitement of bringing my dreams to life. In the following days, I immersed myself in research on sustainable design practices. I learned about using reclaimed wood, water-based paints, and recycled fabrics. This information was more than just details. It was the tools that would allow me to create beautiful and functional spaces while respecting the environment. This new mindset illuminated my creative vision. I could transform the way people interacted with their homes. As I progressed in my research, I noticed Mark starting to notice the changes. His gaze, previously indifferent, now carried suspicion. He watched me with a mixture of skepticism and discomfort, as if trying to decipher this new version of me. This transformation made conflicts more frequent. One day, as we returned from an event, he blurted out, "Are you still doing that hobby of yours?" The word hobby sounded like an attack, an attempt to minimize my pursuit. "It's not a hobby, Mark. It's a dream. It's what I'm pouring my passion and energy into," I replied firmly. It wasn't just my future at stake, it was my identity. The truth, then, became increasingly clear to me. I couldn't let his vision suppress who I am. Meanwhile, Clara watched the transformation with a critical eye. Her messages became more insidious. She began to criticize my efforts, questioning why I dedicated so much time to projects that, according to her, wouldn't lead to anything. "Jessica, you should focus more on the house," she said. But instead of discouraging me, her criticisms only fueled my determination. Despite the growing motivation, doubts arose at unexpected moments. How many times did an inner voice whisper, "What if you fail?" However, instead of letting these thoughts paralyze me, I used them as fuel. If failure was a possibility, then so was success. I needed to connect with the part of me that always believed in that. Then, one night, while browsing social media, I spotted a post from my old college classmate, Tom. He was enthusiastically promoting his work. The idea of him seeing my effort made my heart race. I decided to contact him, and we scheduled a coffee. I needed an outside perspective, someone who could provide honest feedback. Our meeting was everything I hoped for and more. Tom was vibrant. We talked for hours about innovations and the future of design. When I mentioned my sustainable design project, he smiled, and his excitement encouraged me. "Jessica, you're right on time. This is the future," he said, and for the first time in a long time, I heard something that resonated within me as truth. His words were a wave of freshness. My pursuit wasn't in vain. At the end of the meeting, Tom offered to help with publicity and promised to connect me with other professionals in the industry. "Don't worry about what others think. Do it for your heart," he reminded me. That phrase resonated within me. With his help and Clara's, I was determined to bring my dream to life. With renewed energy, I planned my first official project, a shared space that would unite local designers and artists with a focus on sustainable practices. It was a bold idea, and I was ready to present it. I invited everyone to a meeting at Clara's studio, where many creators gathered. On the day of the presentation, the studio was vibrant. I prepared my slides with sketches and ideas that showed how we could impact our communities. The initial anxiety dissipated as soon as I started speaking. Let's imagine a space that not only celebrates creativity but also preserves our planet, I said, the excitement growing with each word. I noticed the expressions of curiosity and excitement among the participants. I wasn't just presenting an idea. I was sharing my passion and showing the possibility of a different future. The questions that arose were an avalanche of enthusiasm and support. The proposal to create an accessible and sustainable environment not only resonated but also awakened a collective desire for change. The energy of the room enveloped me, and I knew that together we could build something meaningful. However, when I returned home, the tension between Mark and me was even more palpable. That night at dinner, his face was stern, and the silence between us was heavy. "Are you sure this isn't just a phase? People come and go from design all the time," he provoked. His skeptical look and doubts bothered me, but I refused to return to that insecurity. "Mark, I'm doing this because it's important to me. I hope one day you'll understand," I replied, determined. These words weren't just for him, but a shout of affirmation to myself. Sitting in my studio, surrounded by my projects, I realized I was at a turning point. The struggle wasn't just against the indifference of those around me, but a constant fight for my own identity. Clarity washed over me. The revolution I was seeking was both external and internal. I was, finally, ready to confront myself. What was beginning to form in my life wasn't just a creative revolution in physical spaces, but a true battle for the freedom to be who I am. The future I always desired was taking shape. And above all, I was determined to turn my ideas into reality, without letting myself be shaken by the criticisms and doubts that arose in my path. The following weeks were a roller coaster of emotions, but finally, the plan for my business began to solidify. With the help of Clara and Tom, I developed a plan for the shared studio I always dreamed of. The idea was to create a studio that not only offered sustainable materials but also functioned as a creative hub for emerging designers and local artists. I envisioned a place where sustainable design wasn't just a concept, but a daily practice, a lifestyle. I decided the space would feature reclaimed wood docks, natural paints, and furniture designed to be not only aesthetically pleasing but also environmentally friendly. The idea that each element told a story of responsibility and creativity took root in my mind. It was more than a commercial mission. It was a movement I was determined to catalyze. With each step I took, Mark's uncertainty continued to worsen. He didn't take the changes well, which became increasingly evident in our daily interactions. He continued to cast his critical eye on me, as if each new project I developed was an affront to our life together. But, even in his distrust, I remained steadfast. I often spent nights sketching the studio layout, surrounded by material samples and visual references. Each sketch became a promise, a manifestation of the future I longed to build. The studio grew in my mind, almost tangible, rising like a beacon of hope and relief. A place where not only I, but many others could finally be free in the expression of their ideas and creativity. As the big day of the opening approached, adrenaline coursed through my veins. The energy was high, and after weeks of planning, I would finally see my vision come to life. With the help of Tom and Clara, I organized a launch event that promised to unite the community. On the eve of the opening, I meticulously prepared every detail. I set up tables, organized materials, and hung the first design prototypes on the walls. The soft lighting and open layout of the space created a welcoming atmosphere. I could hardly wait to show this to everyone. Opening day arrived, and the energy of the studio was infectious. People started pouring in, curious about the space. Bubbling conversations filled the air, laughter and excitement intertwined as visitors explored the studio. I saw familiar faces among them, some classmates, others acquaintances. Everyone was admiring what I had painstakingly built. It felt like each look of admiration was a nudge in the direction I so desired, validation. Among the guests was Clara. Her look, laden with uncertainty, wandered around the environment. When our eyes met, a heavy breath hung between us. She walked towards me, hesitant. "Jessica, this is incredible. You really did it," she said, a hint of surprise in her voice. "I was expecting it, but I didn't imagine it would be so grand." I felt a mix of satisfaction and discomfort. Her surprise was an acknowledgement, but the tone of disbelief was still there. "Thank you, Clara. It's the realization of a dream I've always had," I replied, trying to keep the conversation light. However, deep down, I still worried about her acceptance. It was an internal struggle, wanting her approval while, at the same time, being determined to remain firm in my path. The event continued, and as night fell, Mark arrived. His critical gaze cut through the friendly atmosphere like a knife. He was surrounded by friends, but clearly wasn't there to support. The tension was palpable. He approached the group where I was, and upon hearing the lively conversations about the studio, his expression was one of skepticism. "I think everyone's overdoing it. Design isn't just breathing and living in a space, Jessica. It's a market that demands commitment," he said, making a snide remark that elicited nervous laughter, not because of the humor, but because of the way it was said. Those words echoed in me, but this time, I didn't let them get me down. I took a deep breath and said firmly, "I'm not just creating a space, Mark. I'm creating a new approach. And this is a movement bigger than me." My words resonated, and I realized I wasn't just defending my project, but reaffirming my own identity. The days following the studio's opening brought a new energy and a fast pace to my life. My phone and social media buzzed constantly with new messages from designers and artists, all eager to join my project. The studio, once just a vision, now breathed life, and the creative vibe filled it with laughter and bold ideas. With each workshop I organized, I noticed the bonds strengthening. People weren't just creating, but collaborating and inspiring each other. My approach to sustainable and accessible design was connecting with the community in ways I never imagined. With Clara and Tom's support, the studio became a true space of innovation. However, with this success came unexpected pressure. One night, I received a call from Tom that would change everything. A famous influencer in the design world was interested in visiting the studio. My heart pounded when I heard this. "Jessica, if he likes your work, this could give your studio huge visibility," Tom said. But the idea of being judged by someone so renowned brought back all the insecurities I thought I'd overcome. What if he didn't like it? Determined to make a good impression, I prepared every detail of the studio. The environment was meticulously arranged, and each project I displayed had a story to tell. I was truly willing to show not only the aesthetics but the vision behind my work. Hours turned into days, and the event finally arrived. On launch day, the studio was brimming with life. Friends, creators, and the curious gathered, and the energy was infectious. But when the influencer walked in, the atmosphere intensified. All eyes turned to him, and the tension was palpable. He began to wander the space, observing the projects and asking questions. With each comment, my nervousness grew. Here, design isn't just aesthetics, it's a philosophy. Every piece we create has an impact, I said, trying to convey my passion. When he questioned my concept, asking if it could really make a difference, I hesitated, but didn't let myself be discouraged. "Yes, I'm seeing it happen. This studio is more than a space, it's a movement," I affirmed, my heart racing. The response was positive and encouraging. The influencer praised the space, and the suffocating pressure in the room dissipated as he made a favorable comment about my approach. The event unfolded into a success, and I felt a wave of relief when he promised to share about the studio on social media. In the days following the influencer's visit, visibility and enthusiasm grew. However, this new attention also brought challenges. Mark, who still didn't see my new world as part of our life, seemed more distant. The conversation between us started to become tense again. "This dream of yours might be consuming you, Jessica. Where are you? Who have you become?" he questioned in one of our arguments. The discomfort in his voice cut like a knife. It was as if I was drifting away from him as I got closer to what I truly wanted. The entire studio, with its lights and smiles, contrasted with the worry that Mark felt neglected. I knew I couldn't let this become an obstacle between us. Mark, this isn't just my dream. This studio is also a new opportunity for us. I want you by my side on this journey, I replied, seeking his attention and understanding. The fragility in the air was almost palpable, but I couldn't allow that tension to persist. I needed to be honest about my feelings and desires. So, over dinner one night, I decided it was time to talk. I've worked so hard on this project because I was losing a part of myself. I need you to understand this isn't a rejection of you or what we've built, but an evolution, I declared, trying to convey my desire for a shared future. Mark listened intently, but suspicion still lingered in his eyes. I just don't want you to lose yourself in this role. You're more than this, he said, his voice laced with concern. The acknowledgement in his words touched me, but I knew we needed to understand that my growth didn't mean leaving him behind. The conversation flowed, and despite the difficulty, we began to find common ground. I want you to be a part of this. We can figure out how to balance this together, I said, sincerely. This was my greatest desire, not just for myself, but for us. As I sat at that table, surrounded by sketches and ideas, I realized the struggle wasn't just against external indifference, but also internal. The changes I was experiencing were fundamental not only to the studio, but to my own identity. When I finished speaking, a wave of anxiety dissipated, and I noticed a shift in Mark's expression. The conversation was unfolding in a positive direction. Amidst these emotional discussions, new ideas began to emerge. I had a vision not only for my studio, but for a broader future. Responsibilities and pressures could coexist with my passion. I needed to remember that the true revolution wouldn't happen only within the studio walls, but also in how I handled relationships and the challenges of everyday life. And so, as I immersed myself in the work, I understood that this journey was only beginning. The path ahead, though filled with uncertainties, was also brimming with promise. I was determined to embrace both the challenges and the triumphs, as both were essential parts of who I was becoming. Jessica's true story was unfolding with each step, and I was more than ready to face whatever came next. As the weeks passed after our conversation, the dynamic between Mark and me began to shift. While challenges remained, communication became a vital point in our relationship. He began to show genuine interest in my projects, and discussions about how he could get involved became more frequent. On a sunny morning, I decided to organize an event at the studio, Creative Family Day. The goal was to show how sustainable design is accessible and fun for all ages. The smiles of the children, as they created with recyclable materials, became a true celebration of what I was trying to build. Looking at that vibrant scene, I realized the studio was becoming a space of unity and expression. Mark was by my side, helping to guide the little artists, and during that day, I realized he was allowing himself to explore a side he had previously believed to be hidden. It was as if we were rediscovering each other through this shared project. The studio wasn't just a workspace, it was a new beginning for us. However, as the studio's popularity grew, so did the pressure to innovate. One night, I received a call from Tom, informing me that a famous design influencer was interested in visiting. My heart pounded. The idea of being evaluated by someone renowned was terrifying, but also full of opportunity. I meticulously prepared everything, reflecting on each project and its significance. The atmosphere in the studio was charged with anticipation when the influencer finally arrived. After touring the space, he asked challenging questions, testing the depth of my work. When he questioned whether it could truly make a difference, I hesitated momentarily, but determinedly replied, "Yes, it's happening." This studio represents a larger movement that seeks to transform design as we know it. Surprisingly, his reaction was positive. The influencer praised my work and promised to promote it on social media. The immediate success brought an influx of visitors and new clients, but also generated a new kind of pressure. Mark began to feel even more insecure and distant. You might be losing yourself in this new life, Jessica. Where have you been? Who have you become? He questioned in a moment of frustration. His words were like knives, and the pain I felt made me reflect on our priorities. Mark, this isn't a rejection of you. I'm growing, but I want you by my side on this journey. You're important to me. Inviting him to actively participate in my projects became a natural path. On a quiet evening, I proposed a dinner to talk about it. I used that moment to reiterate my desire to build a life that included our dreams. Let's figure out how to balance this together. The studio is a new opportunity, not a competition, I said, seeking understanding. The conversation was challenging, but positive. Mark shared his fear of being left behind, and we were able to align our expectations. Although obstacles remained, we began to build a mutual understanding that strengthened our bond. In the following months, the studio thrived. I held more public-facing events, promoting sustainable design as a form of expression. The joy of welcoming new ideas and forming a connected community became evident. The studio wasn't just mine, but a collective space that united people passionate about design. Looking back at all I had built, I realized the journey was only beginning. The future looked promising, and I had the support of Mark, my friends, and the community I was forming. Jessica's true story was unfolding, and I was ready to face any challenges that came, without forgetting where I had started. I was living the revolution I had always dreamed of, and every step was a victory.